And clearly, they're deeply threatened by it, hence their preposterous lawsuits.
Yes. Yes, I found that lawsuit rather amusing. And of course, if you go on to AtlasShrugs today, you will see David Yerushalmi, our lawyer, and Robert Muse, American Freedom Law Center, our response, that we're challenging this ridiculous trademark application. Interestingly enough, I had bought the MyJihad.us before they filed their trademark nonsense. So we will absolutely, if they don't drop it, we'll be taking them to court on it. We absolutely will be taking it. It's ridiculous. No court should consider such an application, and we'll make sure that they don't.
So let me get this straight. Let me make sure that everybody has this clear, that you had myjihad.us, and they put their trademark application in after that.
Yeah.
And yet then they're suing you. When you were there first, you could sue them.
True. It's all true. This is, again, this to me is exemplar of Islamic supremacism.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have all your my jihad, they are ours, you know. It's just crazy. And nobody challenges them on it, Robert.
Oh, yes. Well, you know, it's also interesting to note that I doubt that Hamas-linked CAIR is going to file any kind of lawsuit against the violent jihadis. They don't seem to have any problem with jihad terrorists using the word jihad to explain their actions, to gain recruits, to justify beheadings and shootings and mass murder bombings and so on. That doesn't seem to trouble them. They're only going after non-Muslims like you who are daring to point out that Muslims do indeed invoke the word jihad and the teachings of Islam in order to justify these violent actions.
Yes, that's exactly right, because it's not the jihadists that are the problem. It's us. And based on that, you have to question, you know, the motive. What is their motive? And it sounds very much to me like their motives, they share the same motives as the violent jihadists. They're just going about it in a different way. They understand that a war is not any just one front or any one theater. It is a multitude. And considering the objective of the global jihad, considering just how massive their objective is, and according to a captioned internal document entered into the largest terrorist funding trial in our nation's history, where CAIR was named a Muslim Brotherhood group. They were named an unindicted co-conspirator. Their objective is to, quote, eliminate and destroy Western civilization from within. And in a number of documents that were released under a Freedom of Information Act request that I had made to the Department of Justice, that plan and how they intended to do it was very specific, very detailed. And it was interesting how they thought the United States would be very, very easy to sort of capture. With money, this is a quote, money, media, and men. And this is exactly what we see. It's exactly as they planned it. And so it's very scary. Not the fanaticism and the, you know, the fierceness in which they're pursuing their goals. I never doubt the fierceness of an enemy. What is frightening is the confusion and the ignorance on our side. That's frightening.
Absolutely. And you know, you mentioned that the violent jihadis and the stealth jihadis have the same goal, and that Islamic supremacists in general share the same goal. It's important to note that that goal is Sharia. That goal is the imposition of Islamic law over the state. Remember that Syed Abul Alam al-Dudi, the Pakistani jihad leader who died in 1979 and who was a very influential commentator on the Quran and Islamic theologian, as well as being a political leader and the founder of the largest Islamic supremacist party in Pakistan, Jamaat-e-Islami. He was actually, in his commentary on the Quran, very clear He said that in the verse, chapter 9, verse 29, which says that Muslims must fight against even the people of the book, that is primarily Jews and Christians, until they pay the jizya, the special tax, with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. He explained that this meant that non-Muslims have absolutely no right, and this is a quote, he said, non-Muslims have absolutely no right to wield the reins of power in any part of earth, of Allah's earth, and if they do, non-Muslims have the responsibility to dislodge them from that power by any means possible. And so the jihad is the instrument of warfare against non-Muslims who dare to hold political power. And the ultimate goal of it, whether it is violent or stealthy or deceptive on the part of Hamas-linked CAIR and others, it's all the same. It's to impose Islamic law and to make sure that it is Muslims and Islamic rule that is prevalent in the society and not non-Muslim rule. And so that's very interesting in light of what you were saying earlier, that the Sharia, the Islamic law, is being self-enforced by the media when they trumpet this jihad campaign. But do you think that they're really aware of the full implications of what they're doing?
No, I honestly don't. I mean, of course there are operatives. There are Muslim Brotherhood operatives that work, outside of CAIR. You know, there's always that. But I do believe that it is a cluelessness. A piece that I had written for Breitbart, may his soul rest in peace, on the Society of Professional Journalists. This was a directive to journalists on how to report on jihad, essentially. And what it said was, and it's always packaged in this multi-culti, tolerant, nonsensical narrative. You know, don't mention religion. You know, when reporting on these events, if you have to mention religion, I guess you'd have to mention it if the guy was screaming Allahu Akbar while he slaughtered non-Muslims or Muslims that were more secular. If you have to mention religion because events dictated, then make sure you mention other religious attacks. I don't know what religious attacks they mean. I guess they want to go back to Timothy McVeigh, and you'll notice whenever there's an act of jihad, McVeigh is always mentioned, even though McVeigh was not killing in the name of Christ, and he was not killing in the name of religion. It's irrelevant. Or an abortion clinic bombing. They'll equate those two. And so it becomes sort of just, it becomes rote. It's instructional. What's interesting is that it's always, particularly CNN and MSNBC, it's always sort of framed as racist if you don't report it that way, even though Islam is not a race, and even though all we're really fighting for is freedom, freedom for all, individual rights, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, equality of rights for all under the law. It is, this is essential that it be, framed as racism, because there's no more reviled moral crime than racism. What is interesting is this week in a high school, I think in Minnesota, there was a huge fight in a high school that had a large number of Somali Muslim immigrants. And what's interesting about this particular episode, and we see anywhere that they've imported these whole Muslim communities from Somalia, whether it's Lewiston, whether it's Nashville, Emporia, Kansas, there's, gang-related violence against women, against gays. We have the videos on your sites and mine. But what makes this episode tricky is that it became a riot, a violent riot. The police, upwards of 100 police, could not contain it. And it was the Somali Muslim students against African American students. Now, how CAIR is going to frame that one, I don't know. but I can tell you it had nothing to do with race, which is what this is always framed as, and everything to do with religion. And so